first speaker, genius speaker, Professor Binmoeller, my dear friends. His talk is Axios. Please.
Good morning. Thank you, Takao. Well, what an honor to kick off day 2. This meeting is just phenomenal. And again, my thanks to Supo and all of the organizers for this fabulous meeting. So let's start here. I'll talk about hot Axios, and it's really disseminated globally to the point that probably I don't need to show you any videos of how the hot Axios is used. You saw it so beautifully demonstrated yesterday, for example, from Anthony Teo. I'd like to share with you a little bit about how we got to hot Axios, my personal journey. And this is basically where I was. This is back in the 2000s. I was draining pancreatic fluid collections, the gallbladder, the bile duct using the Seldinger technique and using SEMS. But I had complications, and some of them very severe and a few even fatal. So I was sort of this kid here looking at the plumber who is basically plugging the hole of this leak in this bathtub, and I was asking, where are the tools? Because we needed tools dedicated to treat the challenge of leak when we perform transluminal interventions. Necessity is the mother of invention, and that comes from Plato, and what we needed is a transluminal anastomotic stent, and we also needed a Seldinger-free, exchange-free delivery system. So the LAMS concept was born in 2005. I filed the patent. Looks a bit different here than the final Axios that you're familiar with. But the concept, as written in the abstract, is a device. And I actually thought of this really as a device, not a stent. A stent, the intention is to treat an obstructed lumen. We're not treating an obstructed lumen. We're creating a conduit between two cavities, whereby two luminal structures in the body may be drawn together towards each other and a fluid conduit formed in between, with the 3 key features: anchoring lumen-apposing flanges, a self-expanding conduit, what we call the saddle, and it should be fully covered to prevent leak. So to take this concept and make it a reality, something that we can use in our daily practice to benefit our patients, I started the company X-Lumina, a cross-lumens company founded in 2008 in Mountain View, California. And here's the founding team. Some of you may know this individual, Tom DeSimio. He was my nurse for a good decade in my practice, and I was able to recruit him to X-Lumina to go beyond to enable advanced transluminal therapy. So it took about 2 years to finally develop the Axios as you know it now. It went through many, many different iterations, and we matched the goal with the challenge: lumen apposition but avoiding ischemia, resisting migration but removable, to be compressible in the sheath but resume its original Axios shape after deployment. I spent countless hours in this lab with the engineers doing benchtop prototyping, went through many iterations till we finally had the right design that met all of the goals. You may be curious about the name Axios. I baptized it in 2009 because I wanted a name that captures the essence of the device. And this is an acronym, an abbreviation for axial ostomy. We're creating an os, a conduit, a port to advance our endoscope and to enable flow between the two cavities, derived from axial anastomosis. And quite befitting, Axios is also the name of the Greek river god that enables flow. So lambs. We have several lambs, and this is the session dedicated to the different lambs that we now have commercially available. So I'd like to focus really more of my time on what I think is truly unique and what I'm really most proud of, which is the electrocautery-enhanced delivery system with two key features: ceramic bougie-shaped tip, cautery micro wires, here you see them, that converge towards the tip here along the side and at the tip, comprising only 3% of the surface area, so that we have an optimized cutting effect. It works like a scalpel with minimal coagulation effect. And I felt that the procedure needs to be endoscopy controlled, single operator. It's something we're familiar with, of course, with cholangioscopy. So actually, the handle has not changed significantly since the original 3D printed mold here. It looks very similar now. It is lower locked to the working channel. It is a one operator, one hand, one device, and one puncture. So the theme here is one. And because all of us at Xlumina were Star Wars fans, we called it the OB-1 delivery catheter. So what I'd like to do now is take a look with you under the hood. It's important that you understand how that handle works. That's going to be very important when you need to troubleshoot. So we have two hubs, a black hub here and a gray hub here. The black hub advances and retracts the sheath, but it only does that when the two are coupled. That is key. The black and the gray hub must be coupled. There are two locks, a black lock, black hub lock here, and a gray hub lock here, and there is a yellow safety pin. This keeps the black and the gray hubs coupled until you are ready to uncouple the two. There are 4 steps, and to really make this foolproof, we added numbers to the handle. So you see here 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1 is we advance the black hub, it's coupled to the gray hub for puncture. We retract the gray hub and deploy the distal flange. That's after it's uncoupled. We retract the black hub to snug up against the wall, and then number 4 up here, we retract the gray hub to deploy the proximal flange. The locks are key to safe deployment. You're always locking and unlocking in sequence. So you have to always remember that. After you do one action, you need to lock. Do the next action, lock. So the gray lock is what couples the sheath and the inner catheter, so it allows the black hub to advance the sheath as a unit. And it allows the black hub to retract the deployed distal flange to the wall. It really functions like a retractor. The black lock prevents movement of the inner catheter during sheath retraction to deploy the flanges. It's important that you immobilize that inner catheter while you're retracting your sheath to deploy the flanges. So again, the locks, black hub lock, gray hub lock. You need to know where they are, and we even added icons here so that you know what's locked and what's unlocked. The distal and proximal flanges are released independent of one another, and that is critical. You do not want to accidentally deploy the entire lambs inside of your target. Stage 1, you release the distal flange in your target. So that's number 2. See the number 2 here? You have pulled this gray hub up to release the distal flange in your target. There it is, it's released. This is the runway for the release. This is the tray that houses the distal flange. This is the nose cone here. It auto-locks with a click. So we added that so that you can hear when the distal flange is fully deployed. You need to just listen. You'll hear the click, but it will automatically lock for you. Stage 2 is where you release the proximal flange in the bowel. That's number 4 up here. So you pull that gray hub all the way up to release the proximal flange. And we usually release that in the working channel of the endoscope, and then we'll push it out afterwards. But don't forget to snug up. Number 3 here is the snugging up between number 2 and number 4. Snug up before you release the proximal flange. So just look at the numbers, memorize them, make it something that you just do in the dark intuitively. If you ever get lost, look for the black band marker. That indicates the distal tip of the sheath. You need to know where's the distal tip of your sheath at all times. And you can see it endoscopically here. Here's that black mark. That's where the sheath ends. You can see it on ultrasound. You can see we made it so that it's visible as a echo-free region. This is where the distal tip of the sheath is. So if you look for it, you will see it. And if you step on the floral petal, you will see here, because it's radiodense, you will see that black mark. So you will always know where the distal end of that sheath is located. Now, this was designed for the pull technique. It's possible to use the push technique. However, I'm not due to time, I don't have the time to go into that, and it takes that extra level of skill. The pull technique usually is fine, provided you have sufficient space to deploy the distal flange. So that's really critical. It's what I call the runway. Remember, if you're using the smallest Axios, which is 6 millimeters, you need a runway of 20 millimeters. That's why the recommendation is that for CDS, you have at least 15 millimeters, and you're still going to have to use some incremental push-pull to fully deploy that distal flange in the bile duct. If it's a 10 millimeter, you need a runway of 32. If it's a 20 for a gastroenterostomy, for example, you're going to need 38. So almost 4 centimeters, that's a lot. So you need adequate space. Misdeployed lambs. This is really what we have seen in the literature most. It's usually the type 1 and type 2. It's seen most frequently with gastroenterostomies, where 94% of misdeployed lambs were distal flange misdeployment, the type 1 in 2/3, or the type 2 in 1/3. So you see that the distal flange failed to deploy in the target, or it deployed in the target initially, but slipped out because the entire flange was not anchored in the target, the small bowel. In the case of CDS, 73% of the misdeployed lambs were distal flange misdeployment. And this is where you see that the Axios, this is a small one, a 6 or an 8, and it lies outside of the bile duct. It has not engaged the bile duct wall, and there may or may not be there may or may not have been entry into the bile duct. So I always take the time to look for the long axis, and I have 2 quick videos here. As I see, I'm going a little over time. And so here is a gastroenterostomy. It takes some patience. Patience is virtue. And if you take the time, you'll find a long axis like this, and now you know you've got that 4 centimeter runway to safely deploy the distal flange in the small bowel. And you've distended it with water through the oral enteric catheter. Snug it up, and then you switch to the endoscopic view. Looks like it's stopped here. And let's go back. Can you play this one, please? Yes. So here you see the conventional view of the CBD, but I will find the long axis. You may have to orient towards the hilum. This is not an issue if you have a patient who's not to undergo a Whipple operation. So it's very safe to place it towards the hilum. In fact, I think it's even better since you're further away from the cystic duct. But you can see here, you have the long axis oriented towards the hilum. So this is how I like to do my CDS, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in the later session. So here you can see at the apex of the bulb deployment of this 8mm Axios for a CDS. So I'm going to leave you with a few hot tips for hot Axios. Pure cutting current, you need to increase that voltage for difficult penetration is essential. Advance the catheter into the target slowly with steady pressure. SSS, slow, steady, and smooth. Stop. If interposed gas impairs your ultrasound view or you get excessive tenting, look for the boiling sign or the sparkling bubbles. I like that as well. That indicates target entry, stop your advancement, and then disconnect the cautery immediately because there have been many reports of injury and penetrating through the opposite wall with your electrocautery-enhanced catheter. So with that, thank you so much for the opportunity to kick off this session.
Thank you very much, Ken.